Billionaire had been divorced for 7 months, until a call came that his ex was giving birth to his baby. Before we begin, drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from, and once the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Oh, and make sure to follow our channel for more stories like this. Now sit back and enjoy every detail. The mahogany desk in Grant Whitaker's downtown Seattle office gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights at 2:47 a.m. His broad shoulders hunched over quarterly reports, fingers running through his dark hair as he analyzed medical device market projections. At 37, Grant possessed the kind of commanding presence that made board meetings stop when he entered. 6'2", athletic build maintained by early morning runs, sharp jawline and piercing blue eyes that could dissect a business proposal in seconds. His tailored navy suit, though wrinkled from 18 hours of wear, still carried the authority of a man who'd built Whitaker Medical Technologies from a garage startup to a billion-dollar empire. The corner office, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, reflected his success. Sleek furniture, awards lining the walls, and not a single personal photograph in sight. Grant's assistant had left hours ago, but he remained buried in work like every night for the past 7 months. Sleep meant dreams, and dreams meant remembering her laugh, her stubborn streak, the way she'd curl up on their couch reading case files while he worked on his laptop beside her. 2 years of marriage, 2 years of passionate love and constant warfare with his mother. 2 years of watching June Carter, brilliant, fierce June, battle against Eleanor Whitaker's suffocating expectations and traditional demands. He could still hear his mother's voice from that final dinner at the family estate. A proper wife doesn't work 60-hour weeks, Grant. A proper wife focuses on her husband's needs, on building his legacy, on preparing for children. This independence obsession is destroying your marriage. June had set down her wine glass with deadly calm. Mrs. Whitaker, I've built my career defending people's civil rights. I won't apologize for having a purpose beyond decorating your son's arm at charity galas. The tension that followed had been suffocating. Grant had said nothing, caught between the two women who meant everything to him, paralyzed by years of conditioned respect for his mother's opinions. Grant shook his head, refocusing on the spreadsheet. Numbers didn't betray you. Numbers didn't walk away. Numbers didn't force you to choose between your past and your future. The shrill ring of his phone cut through the silence. Grant glanced at the caller ID, Seattle General Hospital. His stomach tightened. Had something happened to his mother? Grant Whitaker. Mr. Whitaker? The voice belonged to a tired-sounding woman. This is Linda Martinez, charge nurse at Seattle General. I'm calling about June Carter. The name hit him like a physical blow. Grant's pen slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the desk. June Carter is in active labor, sir. She listed you as the father. The words seemed to echo in the empty office. Grant's mouth went dry, his heart hammering against his ribs. That's impossible. We've been divorced for 7 months. Mr. Whitaker, I'm not privy to personal details, but the timeline would be consistent. She's been in labor for 6 hours. The baby is coming tonight. Grant's legs suddenly felt unsteady. He gripped the edge of his desk, knuckles white. Images flashed through his mind. His mother's disapproving stare during family dinners, June's frustrated tears after particularly brutal confrontations, his own cowardly silence as the woman he loved fought battles he should have fought for her. Is June okay? She's strong, but labor is difficult. She asked me to tell you. The nurse paused. She said to tell you that she never lied to you. Not once in 2 years of marriage, and she wasn't going to start now. The line went quiet, except for distant hospital sounds, beeping monitors, hurried footsteps. The controlled chaos of life and death decisions happening around the clock. Grant remembered the last fight, the one that broke them. His mother had shown up unannounced at their Bellevue home, criticizing everything from June's career schedule to the way she'd arranged the living room furniture. This house feels cold, Eleanor had declared. No warmth, no family focus. How do you expect to build a proper home when you're never here? June had stood her ground with quiet dignity. I work hard because I believe in what I do, Mrs. Whitaker. Just like your son works hard building his company. It's different for men, dear. Grant is building an empire. You're just playing lawyer. The silence that followed had been deafening. Grant had watched June's face transform, not with anger, but with something worse. Resignation. Mr. Whitaker, are you there? Grant's eyes fixed on the empty picture frame on his desk, the one that had once held their wedding photo. He'd removed it the day the divorce was finalized. but hadn't been able to throw the frame away. "Which room?" His voice came out rougher than intended. "Labor and delivery, 3rd floor. Room 314. Grant was already reaching for his suit jacket, his mind reeling. 7 months ago, June had signed the divorce papers with steady hands and dry eyes, then walked out of their home without a word. She'd packed only her clothes and law books, leaving behind everything she'd tried to build with him. The last thing she'd said was, "Your mother won, Grant. She always said I wasn't wife material, and you proved her right by choosing her opinion over our marriage. But a baby? Their baby?" The elevator down to the parking garage felt like a descent into another lifetime. As Grant slid behind the wheel of his black Tesla, his hands trembling slightly as he started the engine, one thought kept circling through his mind. June had been carrying his child when she walked away, enduring his mother's judgment and his own silence while their baby grew inside her. The streets of Seattle blurred past as he drove through the night toward the hospital, toward a truth that would shatter the careful walls he'd built around his heart. In 7 months of rebuilding his life, Grant had convinced himself that letting June go was an act of mercy, sparing her from his mother's constant interference and disapproval. Now, as he pulled into the hospital parking lot, that rationalization crumbled. June hadn't left because she'd stopped loving him. She'd left because she was protecting herself and their unborn child from a family that would never accept her, and from a husband too weak to defend what mattered most. Grant sat in his car for a long moment, staring up at the maternity ward windows, knowing that somewhere behind those walls, the woman who'd fought his battles alone for 2 years was now bringing their child into the world. Still alone. Will Grant find the courage to face the consequences of choosing his mother's approval over his wife's heart? Or will years of family manipulation prove stronger than the love he threw away? The automatic doors of Seattle General Hospital slid open with a soft whoosh, releasing the familiar cocktail of antiseptic and anxiety into the cool night air. Grant's expensive leather shoes clicked against the polished linoleum as he approached the information desk, his heart hammering so loudly he was certain the elderly volunteer could hear it. "Labor and delivery, 3rd floor," he managed, his voice steadier than he felt. The elevator ride felt eternal. Grant caught his reflection in the brushed steel doors. Disheveled hair, 5 o'clock shadow, expensive suit wrinkled from 20 hours of wearing. He looked like a man who'd been running from something for 7 months, only to discover it had been chasing him all along. The 3rd floor smelled of new beginnings and quiet exhaustion. Nurses moved with practiced efficiency between rooms, their soft-soled shoes whispering against the floor. A man about Grant's age paced near the waiting area, cell phone pressed to his ear, updating someone about contractions and timing. Grant envied him. That man was here from the beginning, part of the journey. Grant was an intruder in his own story. "Excuse me." He approached the nurse's station where a woman with kind eyes and graying temples looked up from her computer. Her badge read, "Linda Martinez, RN. You must be Mr. Whitaker." Linda's voice held the same tired warmth he'd heard over the phone. "Room 314 is just down the hall, but how is she?" The question escaped before Grant could stop it. Linda's expression softened. Strong, determined. "She's been asking for ice chips and refusing pain medication." A small smile played at her lips. She said she wanted to be fully present for this moment. That was June, always facing life head-on, never taking the easy path when the right path was harder. Grant remembered the night she'd brought home the Patterson civil rights case, a discrimination lawsuit against a major corporation that could have destroyed her career if she'd lost. "Everyone thinks I'm crazy," she'd told him, curled up on their living room couch with case files scattered around her. "The partners want me to settle quietly. Your mother thinks I should focus on more appropriate cases." Grant had looked up from his laptop. "What do you think?" "I think Patricia Patterson deserves someone who'll fight for her even if it's scary." June's green eyes had blazed with conviction. "I think doing the right thing is more important than doing the safe thing." She'd won that case. And Grant had been so proud. He'd surprised her with dinner at their favorite Italian restaurant, the little place in Pike Place Market, where they'd had their first date. Now, standing in this hospital hallway, Grant realized June had applied that same principle to their marriage, doing the right thing, protecting their child from a toxic family dynamic, even when it meant doing it alone. "Can I see her?" Grant asked. Linda hesitated. "She's between contractions right now, but Mr. Whitaker, she didn't ask for you to be called until tonight. 7 months is a long time to carry this alone." The gentle rebuke landed like a physical blow. Grant nodded, unable to speak. "Room 314. The door is open, but knock first." Grant walked down the hallway on unsteady legs, passing rooms filled with new families, celebration, and joy. At 3:14, he paused, his hand raised to knock, and heard her voice for the first time in 7 months. "I know you're there, Grant." June's voice was strained but unmistakably hers. The same voice that had whispered, "I love you" on their wedding night. The same voice that had argued passionately for justice in courtrooms. The same voice that had gone quiet during those terrible final weeks when his mother's criticism became a daily assault. Grant stepped into the doorway and time stopped. June sat propped up in the hospital bed, her auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun, her face flushed and damp with perspiration. But it was her eyes, those brilliant green eyes that undid him completely. They held pain, exhaustion, and something else, something that looked almost like relief. "You came," she said simply. "June." Grant's voice cracked. "I didn't know." She shifted slightly, one hand resting protectively on her rounded belly. Even in the unflattering hospital gown, she was beautiful, radiant in the way only women bringing life into the world could be. "I know you didn't know. That's why I told them to call you tonight." June's breathing hitched as another contraction began building. She closed her eyes, her hand gripping the bed rail. Grant moved without thinking, crossing to her bedside. "Can I?" June nodded, and Grant took her free hand in both of his. Her fingers were smaller than he remembered, but still strong. Still June. They breathed through the contraction together in silence. And for a moment, Grant could almost pretend the last 7 months hadn't happened. Almost pretend they were just Grant and June, about to become parents, about to expand their love into something bigger than themselves. When the pain passed, June opened her eyes and studied his face. "You look terrible," she said, and despite everything, there was the faintest hint of a smile in her voice. "I've been working too much." It was a pathetic response, and they both knew it. Some things never change. June's smile faded. "Grant, I need you to understand something. I'm not telling you about her because I want anything from you. No money, no custody battles, no reconciliation attempts. Their baby was a girl. I'm telling you because she's half you, and that matters. She deserves to know her father exists, even if..." June's voice trailed off. "Even if what?" "Even if you choose your mother's opinion over your daughter's future too." The words hit like shrapnel, sharp and devastating because they were true. Grant had spent 7 months telling himself he'd made a noble sacrifice, setting June free from his family's dysfunction. In reality, he'd taken the coward's path, choosing familiar dysfunction over the terrifying work of building something new. Another contraction gripped June, stronger this time. She squeezed Grant's hand with surprising strength, her breathing deep and controlled. When it passed, she looked at him with clear, unwavering eyes. "Grant, I need you to decide right now. Are you here as my daughter's father, ready to put her first no matter what your family thinks? Or are you here out of guilt, planning to disappear again when things get complicated?" The question hung between them like a bridge Grant could either cross or burn. Through the window, Seattle's skyline glittered in the pre-dawn darkness. But all Grant could see was June's face, exhausted and beautiful, and waiting for an answer that would determine the shape of 3 lives. In the hallway, Linda Martinez appeared with a wheelchair and a look of urgency that made Grant's blood run cold. "We need to move to delivery now," Linda announced, her professional calm barely masking the urgency underneath. "The baby's heart rate is dropping." June's face went pale, but her voice remained steady. "What does that mean?" "It means we don't wait any longer." Linda positioned the wheelchair beside the bed. "Dr. Morrison is already prepping the delivery room." Grant watched helplessly as nurses appeared from nowhere, disconnecting monitors and gathering equipment with choreographed efficiency. June's hand slipped from his as she was helped into the wheelchair, and the loss of contact felt like losing her all over again. "Grant." June's voice stopped him as he started to follow. "I meant what I said. Decide now." Before he could answer, they were moving down the hallway at a pace that made conversation impossible. Grant jogged alongside the wheelchair, his expensive suit jacket flapping, feeling completely useless in a world of medical expertise and life-or-death decisions. The delivery room doors swung open to reveal controlled chaos. Dr. Morrison, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and kind but commanding eyes, looked up from adjusting equipment. "Mr. Whitaker, I'm Dr. Morrison. Your wife, ex-wife," June corrected quietly, even as another contraction gripped her. Dr. Morrison's eyebrows rose slightly, but her professionalism never wavered. "June needs to focus on delivery right now." The baby's in some distress, but we're going to take excellent care of both of them. Grant found himself pushed to a corner as the medical team took over. June was transferred to the delivery bed, monitors were reattached, and suddenly the room filled with the rapid beeping of his daughter's heartbeat. Too fast, too irregular. "June, I need you to push on the next contraction," Dr. Morrison said, positioned at the foot of the bed. "Your daughter wants to meet you, but she needs your help." Grant watched June nod, her face set with the same determination he'd seen in countless courtroom battles. She'd always been fearless when it mattered most, whether she was facing down corporate lawyers or bringing their child into the world under emergency conditions. The next few minutes blurred together in a haze of medical terminology, encouraging voices, and June's quiet strength. Grant pressed himself against the wall, feeling like an intruder in this sacred space, until June's eyes found his across the room. "Stay," she whispered between contractions. "Please." So he stayed, watching the woman he'd loved, still loved, fight for their daughter with everything she had. June didn't cry out, didn't complain, didn't ask for pain medication. She simply did what needed to be done, the way she'd always done everything in her life. "I can see the head," Dr. Morrison announced. "One more big push, June." June's eyes never left Grant's face as she gathered her strength. In that moment, he saw everything they'd been to each other. Passionate newlyweds, best friends, sparring partners, heartbroken strangers, and now, parents. "Now, June!" The sound that filled the room wasn't the robust cry Grant expected. It was weak, thin, barely there. "Is she okay?" June's voice was strained, panicked. Dr. Morrison didn't answer immediately. Grant watched in horror as his daughter, was quickly suctioned and rubbed, the medical team working with swift efficiency around her tiny form. Then, like a miracle, a stronger cry pierced the air. "There she is," Dr. Morrison smiled. Small but mighty, just like her mother. Grant felt his knees go weak. Through his tears, he watched as his daughter was placed on June's chest, skin to skin, the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. She was perfect, tiny fingers, a shock of dark hair, and when her eyes opened briefly, they were the same deep blue as his own. "Hello, little one," June whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "I'm your mama." Grant took a shaky step forward, then stopped. This moment belonged to June. She'd carried this child alone, labored alone, brought her into the world while he'd been buried in spreadsheets and self-pity. June looked up at him, her face radiant despite her exhaustion. "Grant, meet your daughter." "Does she have a name?" Dr. Morrison asked while performing routine checks. "Rosie," June said softly. "Rosie Elena Carter Whitaker." Elena. Grant's chest tightened. That had been his grandmother's name, the only family member who'd ever truly loved June, who'd defended her against his mother's criticism during family gatherings. His grandmother had passed away just before the divorce, but not before pulling Grant aside at her 90th birthday party. "That girl loves you more than you deserve," she'd whispered with the bluntness of age. "Don't be fool enough to let your mother's opinions matter more than your wife's heart." He'd been exactly that foolish. "She's going to need some time in the NICU," Dr. Morrison explained, wrapping Rosie in warm blankets. "Just precautionary given the stress during delivery, but she's stable." As the medical team prepared to take Rosie for observation, June caught Grant's hand. "Go with her," she whispered. "Don't let her be alone." Grant nodded, unable to speak. As he followed his daughter down the hallway, his phone buzzed with a text message. Without thinking, he glanced at it. "Grant, darling, I heard through the hospital grapevine that you're there. I'm in the parking lot. We need to discuss this situation immediately." Mother Grant's blood ran cold. Eleanor Whitaker had connections everywhere in Seattle's social and medical circles. Of course she'd already heard about Rosie's birth. Of course she was already here, ready to make this about her opinions and expectations. He looked through the NICU window at Rosie, so small and perfect in her clear bassinet, monitors beeping steadily around her. Then he looked at his phone, where another message was already appearing. "A baby out of wedlock, Grant? After everything I taught you about propriety and family reputation, this is exactly why that woman was never suitable. Meet me in the lobby. Now." Standing there, caught between his newborn daughter and his mother's demands, Grant realized this was the moment June had been talking about. The moment he had to decide who he really was, Eleanor Whitaker's obedient son, or Rosie's father. Through the NICU window, Rosie's tiny hand moved, fingers spreading like a star against the blanket June had chosen, and Grant felt something shift deep in his chest. Something that felt like courage he'd forgotten he possessed. Grant stared at his phone for a long moment, then deliberately turned it off. The action felt like cutting a chain he'd worn for 37 years. "Sir?" A NICU nurse approached with a clipboard. "Would you like to hold your daughter? Skin-to-skin contact is important for premature babies." Grant looked at Rosie through the clear bassinet walls. She was so small, so perfect, her chest rising and falling with determined breaths. A fighter, just like her mother. "Yes," he whispered. "Please." The process of preparing to hold her was meticulous. Hand-washing, gowning, careful positioning. But when Rosie was finally placed against his chest, her tiny weight settling against his heart, the rest of the world fell away. She opened her eyes, those deep blue eyes, and looked directly at him. Grant had read that newborns couldn't really see clearly, but in that moment he was certain his daughter was studying his face, memorizing the features of the father, who had almost missed her entire beginning. "Hello, Rosie," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm your dad. I'm sorry it took me so long to get here." 20 minutes passed in a bubble of perfect peace. Grant memorized every detail. The downy hair on Rosie's head, the tiny fingernails, the way she curled her fingers around his thumb with surprising strength. This was what he'd thrown away 7 months ago. This moment, this connection, this love that felt bigger than anything he'd ever built in the business world. "Mr. Whitaker?" Linda Martinez appeared beside his chair, her expression apologetic but firm. "There's a woman in the lobby asking for you. She says she's your mother and she's quite insistent." Grant's jaw tightened. "Tell her I'm with my daughter." "I did, sir." She said family business takes precedence over. Linda paused delicately. "Over mistakes that need to be handled properly." The words hit Grant like a physical blow. Eleanor had called his daughter a mistake. This perfect, innocent child was a mistake in his mother's eyes. "Linda, can someone else stay with Rosie for a few minutes?" "Of course. Dr. Chen will be doing rounds shortly." Grant reluctantly transferred Rosie back to her bassinet, kissing her forehead softly. "I'll be right back, sweetheart. Daddy has some business to finish." The elevator ride to the lobby felt like descending into a battlefield. Grant straightened his shoulders, smoothed his wrinkled shirt, and prepared for war. Eleanor Whitaker stood near the information desk like a queen holding court, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the early morning hour. At 62, she remained striking. Tall, elegant, wearing a charcoal wool coat that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Her sharp blue eyes, so similar to Grant's own, swept the lobby with obvious disapproval. "Grant." She approached him with measured steps, her voice carrying the crisp authority that had shaped his childhood. "We need to talk. Privately." "Hello, Mother." Grant's voice was steady, neutral. "Rosie is beautiful. Your granddaughter." Eleanor's mouth tightened. "Don't be dramatic, Grant. This situation requires careful handling, not emotional reactions." "Situation?" Grant felt something dangerous stirring in his chest. "My daughter's birth is a situation?" "Lower your voice." Eleanor glanced around the lobby, ever concerned about appearances. "Let's discuss this rationally. The girl has put you in an impossible position, keeping this pregnancy secret, manipulating you with a surprise birth. It's exactly the kind of calculated behavior I warned you about." "June didn't manipulate anything. She protected our daughter from exactly this reaction." Eleanor's laugh was cold, crystalline. "Protected? Grant, she's trying to trap you. Use that child to force a reconciliation, claim financial support, drag the Whitaker name through public scandal. It's textbook gold-digging behavior. June refused alimony in the divorce. She's never asked me for anything. Because she was planning this. The ultimate leverage. An illegitimate child to hold over your head for the rest of your life." The words illegitimate child hit Grant like a slap. He thought of Rosie upstairs, tiny and perfect and innocent, and felt something fundamental shift inside him. "Don't." His voice was quiet, but it carried a warning Eleanor had never heard before. "Don't you ever call my daughter illegitimate." Eleanor's eyebrows rose. "Grant, you're not thinking clearly. The stress of this ambush has clouded your judgment, but I've already spoken to the family attorneys. We can handle this quietly, establish paternity through proper legal channels, arrange appropriate financial support, ensure the child has what she needs without disrupting your future." "My future? Think practically, darling. You're 37, successful, at the prime of your life. There are dozens of appropriate women in Seattle who would make excellent wives, proper mothers for your legitimate children. This mistake doesn't have to define your family legacy." Grant stared at his mother, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time in his life. The woman who had shaped his values, guided his choices, demanded his loyalty. She was talking about his daughter like a business problem to be managed. "What about June?" he asked quietly. Eleanor's smile was sharp as winter. "The girl made her choice when she walked away from your marriage. She chose her career over family, independence over duty. Now she's facing the consequences. A single mother, raising a child alone. Exactly what she deserves for rejecting everything I tried to teach her." Something crystallized in Grant's mind with perfect clarity. This wasn't about propriety or family reputation or appropriate behavior. This was about control. Eleanor couldn't control June, so she'd poisoned his marriage against her. And now she was trying to control his relationship with his own daughter. "Mother," Grant said slowly, "I need you to listen very carefully." Eleanor tilted her head expectantly, assuming he was about to capitulate to her wisdom as he always had. "I'm going upstairs to be with my daughter, and the woman I love, the woman I should never have divorced, should never have let you convince me to abandon." Eleanor's composed mask slipped. "Grant, you're being ridiculous. That woman is the mother of my child, the strongest, most principled person I've ever known, the woman I hurt because I was too weak to stand up to you. I won't let you throw your life away for what, Mother? For love? For my own family? For the chance to be the father Rosie deserves instead of the son you trained me to be?" Eleanor's face flushed with anger. "If you walk away from me now, Grant, if you choose that woman and her bastard over your own family," Grant's voice cut through her threat like ice, "then I choose them. Every single time. I choose them." The lobby fell silent around them. Eleanor stared at her son as if seeing a stranger, and perhaps she was. Grant felt 37 years of conditioning and fear crumble away, leaving something new in their place, something that felt like freedom. "Grant," Eleanor's voice was smaller now, uncertain. "You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more in my life." Grant pulled out his phone and turned it back on. "I'm going to be with my family now. My real family." As he turned toward the elevators, Eleanor's voice followed him, sharp with desperation and fury. "Don't you dare walk away from me, Grant Alexander Whitaker. I made you everything you are." Grant paused at the elevator doors and looked back at the woman who had shaped his world for nearly 4 decades. "No, Mother. You made me everything I was. June and Rosie are going to help me become everything I should be." The elevator doors closed on Eleanor's shocked face, and Grant felt his heart hammering as he rose toward the 3rd floor, toward his daughter, toward the hardest conversation of his life, asking June Carter if there was any chance she could forgive the man who had chosen his mother's approval over their love. Grant found June's room in subdued lighting, the harsh fluorescence dimmed to allow for rest. She lay on her side, facing the window where Seattle's dawn was painting the sky in soft pastels. Her auburn hair spilled across the white pillowcase, and even in the hospital gown she looked ethereal, exhausted, beautiful. "How is she?" June asked without turning around, her voice hoarse from labor. "Perfect, strong. She has your determination." Grant approached slowly, as if June were a wild creature who might bolt. "The doctors say she'll be fine, just precautionary monitoring." June nodded, still not looking at him. "Good, that's good." Grant pulled the visitor's chair closer to the bed, the legs scraping softly against the floor. The sound seemed to echo in the quiet room, filled with everything they weren't saying. "June, I need to tell you what just happened." Now she turned, those green eyes studying his face with the same intensity she'd once used to read juries. "Your mother's here, isn't she? How did you—" "Grant, I was married to you for 2 years. I know exactly how Eleanor Whitaker operates. Hospital connections, social networks, the need to control every situation that might affect the family reputation." June's voice carried no anger, just tired resignation. "What did she want?" Grant ran his hands through his hair, searching for the right words. "She wanted me to handle this situation quietly, arrange support payments, legal distance, ensure Rosie didn't disrupt my future with an appropriate wife." June's face didn't change, but Grant saw her hands tighten slightly on the blanket. "And what did you tell her?" "I told her she was never going to see her granddaughter. I told her I was choosing you and Rosie over her approval." Grant leaned forward, his voice urgent. "June, I told her I was choosing love over fear, and that I should have made that choice 2 years ago." For a long moment, June just stared at him. Then, unexpectedly, her eyes filled with tears. "Grant, do you have any idea what you've just done? I've finally done what I should have done the day she first criticized you. I've put my family first. Your family." June's voice was barely a whisper. "Grant, we're not your family anymore. We're divorced. I'm a single mother raising your daughter, and you're..." You're the man who chose his mother's opinion over our marriage. The words hit Grant like physical blows, each one true and devastating. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, he said quietly. I know I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too cowardly to stand up to a woman who spent 37 years telling me what to think. June shifted in the bed, wincing slightly from the pain. Grant instinctively moved to help her, but she waved him away. Grant, you hurt me more than I thought it was possible to be hurt. When you asked for that divorce, when you sided with your mother's view of who I should be instead of loving who I actually was. June's voice broke slightly. I felt like I was drowning in someone else's expectations of my life. June, let me finish. Her voice regained strength. I spent 7 months rebuilding myself, learning to trust my own judgment again, remembering that I'm a good person worthy of love just as I am. I've been preparing to raise Rosie alone, to be both mother and father, to protect her from exactly the kind of conditional love that destroyed our marriage. Grant felt his heart shattering as he listened to the pain he'd caused, the damage his weakness had inflicted on the woman he loved. And now you're here, June continued, asking me to believe that one confrontation with your mother has changed everything, that the man who couldn't defend his wife can suddenly defend his daughter. I can change, June. I have changed. Have you? June's eyes were clear, direct, unforgiving in their honesty. Grant, your mother has been controlling your life since you were born. Your business decisions, your social circle, even the way you decorated our house. Everything had to meet Eleanor Whitaker's standards of appropriateness. Grant started to protest, but June held up a hand. I watched you become a stranger during those last 6 months of our marriage. Every family dinner was a battlefield where you sat silent while your mother criticized everything from my career, to my clothes, to my choice not to immediately start having babies. You never once told her she was out of line. The memories were like knives. June sitting rigidly through Eleanor's comments about her inappropriate work schedule, her unfeminine ambition, her failure to prioritize family properly, and Grant, saying nothing, keeping peace at the cost of his wife's dignity. I was a coward, Grant said simply. I thought I was protecting you by not creating more conflict, but I was really protecting myself from having to choose sides. And when push came to shove, you did choose a side, just not mine. Grant felt tears he'd suppressed for 7 months finally break free. June, I destroyed the most important thing in my life, because I was afraid of disappointing a woman who's never been satisfied with anything I've achieved. June watched him cry, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. Grant, I believe you love Rosie. I saw your face when you looked at her. That's real love, protective love. But loving our daughter and being capable of being her father in a world where your mother will always see her as a mistake, those are two different things. She'll never have power over me again. What I said to her in that lobby, I meant every word. Today you meant it. But what about next month when she shows up at your office? Next year when she threatens to cut you out of the will? What happens when she tells the Seattle social circle that you're throwing your life away for your ex-wife and illegitimate child? The word illegitimate echoed in the room and Grant flinched as if he'd been slapped. She called Rosie illegitimate, he said quietly. June's eyes flashed with anger, the first real emotion she'd shown since he'd entered the room. She called our daughter illegitimate? I told her never to use that word again. And what did she say? Grant was quiet for a long moment. She said you were trying to trap me, that Rosie was leveraged to force a reconciliation, that you were a gold digger who'd planned this pregnancy to manipulate the Whitaker family money. June's face went very still, very cold. It was the same expression Grant had seen when opposing counsel made particularly offensive arguments in court. The calm before a devastating counterattack. I see. June's voice was deadly quiet. And what did you say to that? I told her she was wrong about everything, that you were the strongest, most principled person I'd ever known, that I'd been an idiot to let her poison our marriage. June studied his face for a long moment, as if weighing his words against 2 years of disappointment. Grant, I need you to understand something. I didn't tell you about this pregnancy because I wanted to protect Rosie from exactly what just happened in that lobby, from being called illegitimate, from being seen as a mistake, from growing up in a family where love comes with conditions and judgment. She won't grow up with those things. I'll make sure of it. How? June's question was simple, devastating. How will you make sure of it when you couldn't protect me from those things and I was your wife? Grant had no answer. The question hung in the room like a challenge, like a test he'd already failed once before. In the silence, June's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and her expression shifted from exhaustion to alarm. "Grant," she said slowly, "we have a bigger problem than your mother's disapproval." June's face had gone pale as she stared at her phone screen. Grant watched her green eyes scan the message again, her free hand instinctively moving to her stomach where their daughter had grown in secret for 9 months. "June, what is it?" She looked up at him, and Grant saw something he'd never seen in her eyes before. Fear. Real, bone-deep fear. "It's from Ethan Langley," she said quietly. The name hit Grant like ice water. Ethan Langley, June's law school boyfriend, the charming prosecutor who'd tried to win her back during their engagement. Grant remembered him clearly. Tall, confident, politically ambitious, with the kind of easy smile that made everyone like him instantly. What does he want? June's hands trembled slightly as she held the phone. "He says he's seen the news about Rosie's birth. He's flying in from Portland tonight." "What news? How could there be?" Grant stopped, understanding flooding through him. "My mother." June nodded grimly. "Eleanor has connections at 3 major newspapers and half the medical community in Seattle. If she wants information leaked, it gets leaked." Grant pulled out his own phone and quickly searched for Seattle news. There it was, buried in the society section of the Seattle Herald's online edition. Tech billionaire Grant Whitaker becomes father to daughter, born to ex-wife. The article was brief but damaging, painting June as the vindictive ex-wife who'd hidden her pregnancy, and Grant as the irresponsible playboy caught off guard by fatherhood. Eleanor's fingerprints were all over the subtle implications and carefully chosen details. "This is my fault," Grant said, his voice hollow. "I should have known she'd retaliate. Read the rest of Ethan's message." June handed him the phone, her voice shaking. Grant read aloud. "June, I saw the article about your situation with Whitaker. I know how his family treated you. I'm flying in tonight to help you navigate this properly. You and the baby deserve better protection than he can offer. I never stopped caring about you. E." Grant felt something dangerous stirring in his chest, a possessive rage he hadn't experienced since their wedding day, when Ethan had shown up uninvited and cornered June during the reception. "He never stopped caring about you." Grant's voice was tighter than he intended. "Grant, don't. This isn't about jealousy. Isn't it? The man who spent 2 years trying to break us up suddenly appears the moment there's trouble in our lives." June struggled to sit up straighter, wincing from post-delivery pain. "Ethan is a friend. He was concerned when he saw the article, that's all. June, the man proposed to you 3 times before you met me. He called you every holiday for the first year of our marriage. Friends don't do that. And husbands don't choose their mother's opinions over their wife's dignity. But here we are." June's voice carried a sharp edge Grant deserved but didn't want to hear. Before Grant could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed his assistant's number. "Miranda, it's 5 in the morning. Mr. Whitaker, I'm so sorry to call, but there's been a situation. The Seattle Herald article has been picked up by business news outlets. The stock price is already dropping in pre-market trading, and I've got reporters calling about the personal developments." Grant closed his eyes, feeling the walls of his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. How bad? Bad enough that the board is requesting an emergency meeting this afternoon. They're concerned about the company's reputation and your fitness to lead during personal scandals. Personal scandals. His daughter's birth was being called a personal scandal. "Miranda, cancel all my meetings for the week. I'm taking family leave. Sir, with respect, the Hartwell merger closes on Friday. If you're not here to, then it doesn't close." Grant's voice carried a finality that surprised even him. "I'm with my family." He hung up and found June staring at him with an unreadable expression. "You just walked away from a $100 million deal." "Yes. Grant, you've worked on the Hartwell merger for 18 months. It's your biggest acquisition ever." "I know." June was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. The old Grant would never have done that. Business always came first. The old Grant was an idiot who had his priorities completely backwards. Before June could respond, there was a soft knock on the door. Linda Martinez appeared with a clipboard and a concerned expression. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have another visitor situation. There's a gentleman in the lobby asking about Ms. Carter. He says he's a close family friend, but he's not on the approved visitor list." "Ethan," June said quietly. "He's very insistent," Linda continued. "And there are also reporters in the parking lot asking about the birth announcement. Hospital security is handling them, but..." Grant stood up abruptly, his protective instincts flaring. "No one talks to reporters about my daughter, no one." "Grant," June's voice was tired but firm. You need to let Ethan come up. Like hell I do. He's a prosecutor with connections to family court judges. If this turns into a custody battle, and after that article it might, I need legal advice from someone who understands how these things work. The words custody battle hit Grant like a punch to the stomach. June, I wouldn't what? Protect my daughter from a family that calls her illegitimate and a father who couldn't defend his wife from his own mother? Grant stared at her, understanding dawning with horrible clarity. June wasn't just protecting Rosie from Eleanor's judgment. She was preparing for the possibility that Grant would revert to his old patterns, that he'd choose the easy path over the right one when the pressure mounted. You think I'm going to disappoint you again? Grant, I think you're going to try not to disappoint me. But trying and succeeding are different things, and I can't risk Rosie's future on your good intentions. The door opened again, and this time it wasn't Linda. Ethan Langley stepped into the room with the confident stride of a man who'd never doubted his welcome anywhere. At 34, he'd grown more handsome with age, still tall and lean, his sandy brown hair perfectly styled, his suit expensive but not flashy. He carried himself with the easy confidence of a man who'd never failed at anything important. June. His voice was warm, concerned, intimate in a way that made Grant's jaw clench. I came as soon as I saw the news. Ethan moved to June's bedside without acknowledging Grant's presence, taking her hand in both of his. How are you feeling? How's the baby? Tired, but we're both fine. June's voice was softer than it had been with Grant, and that hurt more than Grant wanted to admit. I brought flowers, but the nurses said no deliveries to the maternity ward. Security protocols. Ethan finally glanced at Grant, his expression politely neutral. Grant, congratulations on your daughter. Ethan. Grant's voice was equally neutral, equally polite, and equally insincere. June, I've been thinking about your situation since I saw the article. The way they framed it, implying you were vindictive, secretive, it's character assassination. We need to control the narrative before this gets worse. We? Grant stepped closer to the bed. This is a family matter, Langley. Ethan's smile was patient, condescending. Grant, I understand you're protective, but June needs someone with experience in media management and family law. Someone who understands how these stories can spiral out of control. Someone like you? Someone who has her best interests at heart? Yes. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. June looked between the two men, her ex-husband fighting to prove he'd changed, and the man who'd been waiting in the wings for 2 years for exactly this opportunity. Both of you, stop. June's voice cut through the testosterone-fueled standoff. This isn't about either of you. This is about protecting Rosie from exactly this kind of drama. Grant and Ethan both fell silent, chastened. Ethan, I appreciate you coming, but June, before you make any decisions, there's something else you need to know. Ethan pulled out his phone, his expression grim. The article this morning was just the beginning. Eleanor Whitaker has been very busy. Ethan's expression was grim as he scrolled through his phone. Eleanor didn't just leak one story, June. She's orchestrated a full media campaign. Grant felt his blood turn to ice. What do you mean? Ethan began reading from his screen. Seattle Business Journal. Whitaker Medical's leadership crisis. Can a CEO navigate personal scandals? Vancouver Sun. Tech moguls, secret baby drama rocks. Pacific Northwest. Portland Tribune. Former Seattle prosecutor Ethan Langley comments on ex-girlfriend's surprise motherhood. You gave a comment to the press? Grant's voice was dangerously quiet. I told them I had no comment, but they'd already talked to someone claiming to be a family friend who provided plenty of details about June's difficult marriage and erratic behavior before the divorce. June's face went pale. What details? Ethan hesitated, then continued reading. Sources close to the family describe Carter as professionally obsessed and unable to prioritize marriage and family. The source suggests the hidden pregnancy was typical manipulative behavior, designed to trap the billionaire. Grant felt rage building in his chest like a nuclear reaction. His mother hadn't just leaked the birth, she'd systematically destroyed June's reputation to protect the family name. There's more, Ethan said quietly. Financial Times picked up the story. They're questioning your judgment as CEO, suggesting the board should consider leadership changes. Stock prices down 12% and falling. Grant's phone buzzed with another call from Miranda, then another from board member Harrison Cole, then 3 more calls in rapid succession. They're circling like vultures, Grant said, declining all the calls. Grant, June's voice was steady but worried. You need to take those calls. Your company can burn to the ground before I leave you and Rosie to deal with this alone. Grant's voice carried absolute conviction. I made that mistake once, never again. Ethan's eyebrows rose slightly. That's unexpectedly admirable, Grant. But noble gestures don't protect June from character assassination or Rosie from growing up with this scandal following her around. What do you suggest? Grant's tone was carefully neutral, but June could see the effort it cost him to ask for Ethan's help. Damage control. Get ahead of the narrative. June goes on record with her side of the story. The devoted wife who tried to save her marriage. The professional woman who kept working because she believed in her career. The mother who protected her daughter from a toxic family dynamic. Absolutely not. Grant's response was immediate. June doesn't owe the public an explanation for living her life with integrity. Grant's right, June said quietly. I won't turn my daughter's birth into a media circus. Ethan leaned forward, his prosecutor instincts taking over. June, you're thinking like a lawyer, not like a mother. Right now, Eleanor Whitaker controls the story. Every day you stay silent, her version becomes more accepted as truth. By the time Rosie starts school, every Google search of her name will bring up articles calling her mother manipulative and her father weak. The words hit June like physical blows. Grant watched her face crumple as she imagined their daughter growing up in the shadow of Eleanor's lies. There has to be another way, Grant said desperately. There is. Ethan's voice was calm, measured. June and Rosie come to Portland with me. Clean slate, fresh start. I have connections there. Family court judges, media contacts, political networks. I can protect them from Eleanor's reach. The room went deadly silent. Grant felt the world tilting on its axis as he realized what Ethan was really offering. Not just legal protection, but a complete escape from Grant's toxic family legacy. You're asking her to disappear with our daughter, Grant said, his voice hollow. I'm offering her a chance to raise Rosie in peace, away from newspaper headlines and boardroom politics and mother-in-laws who call children illegitimate. June was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands folded in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Would you do it, Ethan? Take on another man's child? Accept all the complications that come with that? Ethan's answer was immediate. Certain. June, I've been in love with you for 6 years. I'd raise Rosie as my own daughter and be grateful for the chance. Grant felt something break inside his chest. This wasn't just about custody or media scandals anymore. This was about June being offered the kind of unconditional love and support he'd failed to give her during their marriage. June, Grant's voice was rough with emotion. Please don't make any decisions right now. You're exhausted, overwhelmed. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in months, June interrupted. Grant, I love that you stood up to your mother today. I love that you're choosing family over business. But love isn't enough if you can't protect us from the consequences of loving you. Before Grant could respond, his phone rang again. This time it was his mother's ringtone, Mozart's Requiem, which suddenly seemed grimly appropriate. Don't answer it, June said. I have to. If she's still talking to reporters, let me, Ethan said, reaching for the phone. As June's legal counsel. You're not her legal counsel, Grant snapped. I am now, June said quietly. Ethan, please answer it. Grant watched in numb shock as Ethan answered his phone with professional authority. This is Ethan Langley, representing Ms. Carter and her daughter. Mrs. Whitaker, you need to cease all contact with media outlets immediately, or we'll pursue legal action for defamation and harassment. Eleanor's voice was loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. Young man, you have no authority over family matters. I demand to speak with my son. Your son is unavailable. However, I'm authorized to inform you that any further attempts to damage Ms. Carter's reputation will result in immediate legal consequences. How dare you threaten me? Grant, if you're listening, you need to control this situation before it destroys everything we've built. Ethan's voice remained calm. Mrs. Whitaker, everything you've built was constructed on the foundation of controlling your adult son's life. That foundation is crumbling. I suggest you adjust your expectations accordingly. The line went dead. Eleanor had hung up, probably in a rage that would fuel even more vindictive behavior. Well, Ethan said, handing the phone back to Grant. That went about as expected. June was staring at Ethan with something that looked like gratitude, maybe even admiration. Grant recognized the look. It was how she used to look at him when he'd handled difficult situations with strength and wisdom, before he'd become weak and indecisive under his mother's pressure. Thank you, June said softly. I haven't had anyone defend me like that in A long time. Grant felt the comment like a knife between his ribs. She was right. He'd stopped defending her months before their divorce, leaving her to fight Eleanor's battles alone while he stayed silent and tried to keep peace. June, Grant said quietly, if you go to Portland with Ethan, when will I see Rosie? I don't know. June's voice was honest, heartbreaking. Maybe weekends, maybe holidays. Maybe when she's old enough to choose for herself whether she wants a relationship with the Whitaker family legacy. Grant thought of his daughter in the NICU, so small and perfect, depending on him to be the father she deserved. He thought of years of stolen moments, supervised visits, growing up as a stranger to his own child while another man tucked her in at night and taught her to ride a bike. Don't decide tonight, he said desperately. Give me a chance to prove I can protect you both from my mother, from the media, from all of it. How? June's question was simple, devastating. How do you protect us from Eleanor when she has unlimited resources and 40 years of practice at getting what she wants? Grant didn't have an answer, but as he looked at June's exhausted face and thought of Rosie sleeping in the NICU, he knew he had to find one, even if it meant destroying everything else he'd built in the process. Grant spent the night in the NICU waiting area, refusing to leave the hospital while June considered Ethan's offer. He dozed fitfully in an uncomfortable chair, waking every hour to check on Rosie through the observation window. At 6 a.m., Dr. Chen found him there, stubble-faced and wrinkled, staring at his sleeping daughter. Mr. Whitaker, Rosie's doing beautifully. We should be able to move her to the regular nursery this afternoon. Thank you, Grant said, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. Can I hold her again? Of course. 20 minutes later, Grant sat in the quiet NICU with Rosie against his chest, her tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb. She was awake, those deep blue eyes studying his face with what seemed like infinite wisdom. I don't know how to fix this, sweetheart, he whispered. Your grandmother is trying to destroy your mother's reputation. Your mother is thinking about taking you away where I can't protect you. And I'm sitting here talking to a day-old baby because you're the only person who doesn't think I'm completely useless. Rosie made a small sound, almost like she was listening. The thing is, Grant continued, his voice breaking slightly, I spent 37 years being the son my mother wanted instead of the man I needed to be. And now I don't know if it's too late to change that. His phone buzzed with a text from Miranda. Emergency board meeting moved to 8 a.m. They're voting on a motion of no confidence. You need to be here. Grant stared at the message, then at his daughter's perfect face. The choice was simple and devastating. Save his company or stay with his family. 2 years ago, there wouldn't have been a choice. Business always came first. He typed back, I won't be there. Send my resignation letter to the board. His phone immediately rang. Miranda's voice was panicked. Sir, you can't resign. This is exactly what they want, to force you out during a scandal. Fight back. Miranda, I need you to prepare severance packages for my entire executive team, generous ones, and set up a meeting with our competitors who've been trying to acquire us. Mr. Whitaker, you're talking about selling the company you built from nothing. I'm talking about protecting what actually matters. Grant hung up and kissed Rosie's forehead. Your daddy's about to do something that would have terrified him yesterday, baby girl. But maybe that's what growing up really means. Finally being brave enough to lose everything for the right reasons. 30 minutes later, Grant knocked softly on June's door. She was awake, sitting up and looking stronger, though her eyes were red-rimmed from crying. How's Rosie? She asked. Perfect. Beautiful. Wondering why her parents are making everything so complicated. Grant managed a weak smile. June, I need to tell you something. Grant, if this is another plea for me to stay, I just resigned from Whitaker Medical. June stared at him in shock. You what? I'm selling the company. Everything I spent 15 years building, I'm walking away from it. Grant, that's insane. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Grant moved closer to the bed. June, I finally understand what you were trying to tell me during our marriage. I can't protect you and Rosie from Eleanor's influence while I'm still dependent on the Whitaker family money and reputation. June's voice was barely a whisper. Grant, that company is worth billions. You're talking about giving up everything. I'm talking about keeping everything that matters. Before June could respond, there was a commotion in the hallway, raised voices, the sound of someone arguing with hospital security. Sir, you need to calm down. This is a maternity ward. I don't give a damn what ward this is. I want to see Grant Whitaker immediately. Grant recognized the voice. Harrison Cole, chairman of his board of directors. Stay here, Grant told June, but she was already reaching for her robe. I'm not hiding anymore, Grant. Whatever this is, we face it together. They stepped into the hallway to find Harrison Cole, red-faced and furious, being restrained by two security guards. Behind him stood Eleanor Whitaker, impeccably dressed despite the early hour, her face a mask of cold satisfaction. "Grant!" Harrison spotted him immediately. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Resigning in the middle of the biggest acquisition in company history? The board is prepared to offer you a leave of absence, but resignation? Harrison, this isn't the place." "Like hell it isn't." Harrison's voice echoed down the hallway. "You've lost your mind over some domestic situation. We can handle the media, manage the scandal, but you can't just walk away from your responsibilities." Eleanor stepped forward, her voice deadly calm. "Grant, darling, I've been trying to protect you from exactly this kind of emotional decision-making. Mr. Cole has graciously agreed to help stabilize the company while you work through this episode." "Episode?" June's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "My daughter's birth is an episode?" Eleanor's gaze shifted to June, and Grant saw something truly ugly in his mother's eyes. "Ms. Carter, you've already done enough damage to this family. I suggest you focus on your own situation and leave business matters to the adults." The condescension in Eleanor's voice was like gasoline on June's anger. Grant watched his ex-wife transform into the brilliant attorney who'd never lost a civil rights case. "Mrs. Whitaker, I've been listening to your insults and manipulations for 2 years, but if you think I'm going to let you call my daughter an episode or treat her father like your personal puppet, you're sadly mistaken." "Puppet?" Eleanor's laugh was crystalline and cold. "My dear, Grant has built everything he has because of my guidance and connections. Without the Whitaker family name and resources, he's just another failed entrepreneur with an inflated ego." Grant felt something snap inside him, not anger but clarity. Perfect, absolute clarity. "You're right, Mother." Everyone turned to stare at him. Eleanor smiled triumphantly. "Without the Whitaker name, without your connections, without your approval, I'm just Grant. Just a man who loves his daughter and wants to build a life worthy of her respect." Eleanor's smile faded. "And you know what?" Grant continued, his voice growing stronger. "I'd rather be just Grant raising my daughter to value love over money and integrity over reputation than be Grant Whitaker, teaching her that family comes with conditions and love has a price." Harrison stepped forward desperately. "Grant, think about this rationally. You're talking about throwing away 15 years of work. I'm talking about investing the next 15 years in something that actually matters." Eleanor's face was white with rage. "If you walk away from this company, if you choose that woman and her bastard over your family legacy, I will make sure you never work in this city again. Every door I opened for you, I will close." Grant looked at his mother, really looked at her, and saw not the powerful matriarch who'd shaped his world, but a frightened old woman desperately clinging to control she was losing. "Mother," he said gently, "you can't close doors I don't want to walk through anymore." Eleanor staggered slightly as if he'd struck her. Harrison grabbed her arm to steady her. "This is madness," Harrison muttered. "Complete madness." "No," June said quietly, stepping closer to Grant. "This is what courage looks like." Grant felt June's hand slip into his, and for the first time in 7 months he felt like he could breathe properly. "Harrison, the company will be fine, better than fine. It'll be free to grow without the drama my family seems to generate wherever we go." "And what about you?" Eleanor's voice was smaller now, uncertain. "What will you do without everything I built for you?" Grant looked at June, then through the window toward the NICU where Rosie was sleeping, then back at his mother. "I'm going to learn how to be the man my daughter deserves to call daddy, even if it takes me the rest of my life to figure out how." As security began escorting Eleanor and Harrison toward the elevators, Grant heard his mother's voice one last time, sharp with desperation. "Grant, you'll regret this. You'll come crawling back when you realize what you've thrown away." Grant squeezed June's hand tighter and didn't look back. The hospital hallway fell quiet after Eleanor and Harrison disappeared into the elevator. Grant stood holding June's hand, both of them staring at the space where his old life had just walked away forever. "Grant." June's voice was soft, uncertain. "What did you just do?" "The right thing." Finally, Grant turned to face her, and June saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Peace. "June, I know I have no right to ask this, but please don't go to Portland. Give me a chance to prove that the man who just chose you and Rosie over everything else is the real me." Before June could answer, Ethan appeared at the end of the hallway, having witnessed the entire confrontation from the elevator bank. "Well?" he said, approaching them with a wry smile. "That was quite a performance, Grant. Very dramatic. Very expensive." Grant's jaw tightened, but June squeezed his hand. "It wasn't a performance, Ethan. June, the man just threw away a billion-dollar company in a fit of guilt. That's not sustainable change. That's a grand gesture that'll lose its shine when reality sets in." Grant started to respond, but June stepped forward. "Ethan, I appreciate everything you've done for me today. The legal protection, standing up to Eleanor, offering me a safe place for Rosie. But you're wrong about Grant." Ethan's confident expression faltered slightly. "June, 2 years ago, when Grant asked for a divorce, I was devastated, but I was also angry because I knew that somewhere inside him was the man I fell in love with, the man who built a company from nothing because he wanted to help people, not because he wanted to impress his mother." Grant felt tears threatening as June continued. "I've been waiting for 2 years to see that man choose love over fear, and I just watched him do exactly that, knowing it would cost him everything he thought he wanted." Ethan was quiet for a moment, studying both their faces. When he spoke, his voice held the respect of one professional for another. "June, I hope you're right. I hope he's capable of sustaining this choice when the bills come due and reality sets in. But if you're wrong," Ethan handed her a business card. "My offer stands. Portland, a fresh start, a man who'll never make you choose between being loved and being yourself." He turned to Grant, extending his hand. "For what it's worth, Grant, what you did took guts. I respect that, even if I think you're crazy." Grant shook his hand. "Take care of yourself, Langley." As Ethan walked away, June leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. "June, are you okay? Do you need to lie down?" "I'm fine, Grant, do you understand what you've done? You've given up everything for us, but what if we can't make it work? What if the damage from the divorce is too deep to heal?" Grant took her hands in both of his. "June, I'd rather risk everything on the chance that we can build something real together than spend the rest of my life safe and alone, wondering what might have been." Before June could respond, Linda Martinez appeared with a wheelchair and a warm smile. "Ms. Carter, Dr. Morrison wants to see you and Rosie together. If everything looks good, you might be able to go home this afternoon." "Home," June repeated softly, and Grant heard the question in her voice. "June," Grant said carefully, "where is home for you and Rosie?" June was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. I gave up our house when we divorced. I've been staying at a small apartment downtown, but it's not really set up for a baby." Grant's mind raced. Their old house in Bellevue, the one they'd shared for 2 years, was still his. He'd been unable to sell it, unable to change anything about it. Some part of him had always hoped. "The Bellevue house is exactly as you left it," he said quietly. "Your books are still on the shelves. Your coffee mug is still in the kitchen cabinet. Even your plants survived. I hired someone to take care of them." June stared at him. "Grant, you kept everything?" "I kept everything because I couldn't accept that you were really gone." "I know that sounds pathetic." "It doesn't sound pathetic. It sounds like a man who loved his wife and didn't know how to fight for her." As Linda wheeled June toward the nursery to see Rosie, Grant's phone buzzed with yet another call. This time it was his lawyer, David Chen. "Grant, what the hell is going on? I've got reporters calling, board members demanding explanations, and your mother threatening to sue you for breaching fiduciary duty. Please tell me you haven't actually resigned." "David, I need you to expedite the sale of Whitaker Medical. I want it done quickly, cleanly, and I want the proceeds set up in trust funds, one for Rosie's education, one for June's financial security, and the rest for medical research grants." "Grant, you're talking about billions of dollars. Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." An hour later, Grant sat in the nursery watching June feed Rosie for the first time. The sight took his breath away. His ex-wife cradling their daughter with infinite tenderness, whispering softly about all the adventures they'd have together. "She's hungry," June laughed as Rosie latched on immediately. "Just like her father, impatient when she wants something. She's beautiful, you're both beautiful." June looked up at him. "Grant, I need to ask you something, and I need a completely honest answer. Anything. Do you regret it? Walking away from everything you built?" Grant was quiet for a moment, watching Rosie's tiny fingers curl and uncurl as she fed. "June, 3 days ago, if someone had told me I'd give up my company for a chance to be a real father and husband, I'd have said they were insane. But sitting here, watching you feed our daughter, knowing that I chose this over everything else." Grant's voice grew thick with emotion. "I've never been richer in my life. Tears slipped down June's cheeks. Grant, I want to believe we can make this work, but I'm scared. Scared that when the excitement of grand gestures wears off, we'll fall back into old patterns. Scared that your mother will find new ways to hurt us. Scared that I'll open my heart to you again and you'll choose the easy path when things get difficult. I'm scared too, Grant admitted. I'm terrified that I've spent so many years being weak that I don't know how to be strong. But June, I'd rather fail trying to be the man you and Rosie deserve than succeed at being someone I can't respect. June shifted Rosie to her shoulder, patting her back gently. If we do this, if we try again, it has to be different. Complete honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. No more staying silent to keep peace. No more choosing other people's opinions over each other's feelings. Yes, all of that, yes. And your mother? Grant, I can't have Eleanor in Rosie's life if she's going to treat her like a mistake or an embarrassment. Grant's voice was firm, certain. My mother made her choice when she called our daughter illegitimate. She'll never have the chance to make Rosie feel unwanted or ashamed. June studied his face for a long moment, seeing something there she'd almost forgotten, the fierce protectiveness that had first made her fall in love with him. Okay, she said softly. Okay, let's go home. Let's see if we can build something worth keeping this time. Grant felt his heart stop, then start again in a rhythm that felt like hope. Home, he repeated, and for the first time in 7 months the word meant everything. 3 weeks later, Grant stood in the kitchen of their Bellevue home, preparing June's morning coffee exactly the way she'd always liked it, strong with a touch of vanilla cream. Through the window he could see Elliott Bay sparkling in the autumn sunlight, the same view that had sold them on this house 4 years ago, when they were young and foolishly certain that love could conquer anything. The past weeks had been a delicate dance of rediscovering each other while caring for a newborn. June had moved back into the master bedroom, but they slept like polite strangers, careful not to touch, both afraid of assuming too much too soon. Grant had converted his home office into a nursery, spending hours assembling cribs and changing tables with the focused intensity he'd once reserved for board meetings. Morning, June appeared in the doorway, Rosie in her arms, both of them still in pajamas. June's hair was pulled back in a messy bun and she had that slightly overwhelmed look of new mothers everywhere. But to Grant, she'd never been more beautiful. How did she sleep? Grant handed June her coffee, their fingers brushing briefly. Better, only up twice. June settled into the breakfast nook where they'd shared countless meals during their marriage. Grant, we need to talk about something. Grant's stomach clenched. For 3 weeks he'd been waiting for this moment, when June would realize that grand gestures and good intentions weren't enough to rebuild a marriage that had been broken by years of fundamental incompatibility. Okay. He sat across from her, trying to read her expression. I got a call yesterday from the prosecutor's office in King County. They want me back. Grant felt a surge of panic. June, if this is about money, the trust funds are... It's not about money, Grant. It's about me figuring out who I am now that I'm not just fighting to survive our marriage. The words stung, but Grant recognized their truth. During their marriage, June had spent so much energy defending herself against Eleanor's criticisms and Grant's silence that she'd lost touch with her own ambitions and dreams. What did you tell them? I told them I needed to think about it. The position would mean long hours, high-profile cases, probably some travel. June's eyes searched his face. 2 years ago, that would have been a problem for us. Grant remembered those fights, June working late on important cases while Eleanor complained about wives who prioritize careers over family, and Grant caught in the middle, saying nothing, choosing peace over partnership. June, what do you want to do? I want to take the job. I want to prosecute the cases that matter, fight for people who need someone to believe in them. June's voice grew stronger, more confident. But I also want to be a good mother to Rosie, and I want... She paused, vulnerable again. I want to see if we can build something real this time. Then take the job. June stared at him. Just like that? June, I fell in love with a woman who was passionate about justice, who worked 60-hour weeks because she believed in making the world better. I was an idiot to let my mother convince me that your career was a threat to our marriage, instead of one of the things that made you extraordinary. Tears gathered in June's eyes. Grant, it won't be easy. New baby? Demanding job, trying to figure out how to be a family again? Then we'll figure it out together. I'll handle night feedings when you have early court dates. I'll take Rosie to daycare when you're in trial. We'll hire help when we need it. And we'll never again let other people's opinions dictate how we live our lives. June reached across the table and took his hand. I love you, she said simply. I never stopped loving you. even when I hated what we'd become. I love you too, both of you, more than I thought it was possible to love anything. Before either of them could say more, the doorbell rang. Grant frowned. They weren't expecting anyone, and reporters had finally stopped camping outside their house. I'll get it. Grant kissed June's forehead and walked to the front door. Through the peephole, he saw Eleanor Whitaker standing on their porch, perfectly dressed as always, but somehow smaller than he remembered. Her usual imperious confidence seemed diminished, replaced by something that looked almost like uncertainty. Grant opened the door but didn't invite her in. "Mother?" "Grant." Eleanor's voice lacked its usual commanding tone. "May I come in?" "That depends. Are you here to apologize to my wife and daughter? Or are you here to create more drama?" Eleanor flinched slightly at his directness. For 37 years, Grant had spoken to her with unfailing respect and deference. This new version of her son clearly unsettled her. "I'm here because I've lost everything," Eleanor said quietly. "My son, my granddaughter, my influence over the company you built. I'm here because I'm a 72-year-old woman who realized too late that control isn't the same thing as love." Grant studied his mother's face, looking for signs of manipulation or calculated vulnerability. But what he saw was simpler and more heartbreaking. Genuine regret. "June," he called over his shoulder. "My mother is here. It's your choice whether she comes in." June appeared in the hallway, Rosie in her arms. She looked at Eleanor for a long moment, then stepped aside. "5 minutes," June said. "And if you say one word that hurts my daughter's feelings, you're gone forever." Eleanor entered their home for the first time since before the divorce, her eyes immediately going to the baby in June's arms. "She's beautiful," Eleanor whispered. "She has Grant's eyes. Her name is Rosie Elena," June said pointedly. "After Grant's grandmother." Eleanor's breath caught. "Elena would have loved her." "Elena did love her," Grant said firmly. "She loved June too. She told me I'd be a fool to lose her. And she was right." Eleanor nodded slowly, tears gathering in her eyes. "Grant, I need you to know that everything I did, the interference, the criticism, the media manipulation, I thought I was protecting our family name, our legacy. You were protecting your control," Grant replied. But his voice wasn't cruel, just honest. "Yes," Eleanor admitted. "I was. And in trying to control everything, I lost what mattered most." She looked at June directly for the first time. "June, I owe you an apology. Multiple apologies. You were never the problem with Grant's life. You were the best thing that ever happened to him. And I was too threatened by your independence to see it." June shifted Rosie slightly, considering her response. "Mrs. Whitaker, I appreciate the apology, but words don't undo 2 years of being made to feel unwelcome in my own marriage." I know they don't." Eleanor's voice was smaller than June had ever heard it, "but I'm hoping they might be a start." Grant watched this exchange, feeling something shift in his chest. This wasn't the controlling matriarch who'd shaped his childhood. This was a frightened old woman who'd finally realized that love couldn't be commanded or manipulated into existence. "Mother," Grant said gently, "if you want to be part of Rosie's life, it has to be on our terms. No criticism of June's career. No commentary on our parenting choices. No attempts to manipulate or control." Eleanor nodded eagerly. "Yes, whatever you need. And you have to understand that June and I make decisions together now, as equal partners. Your opinion is welcome when we ask for it, but it's not the final word on anything. I understand." June studied Eleanor's face, then looked at Grant. He could see her weighing forgiveness against self-protection, hope against hard-earned wisdom. "One chance," June said finally. "You get one chance to be the grandmother Rosie deserves. But if you hurt her, if you make her feel unwanted or ashamed, if you try to turn her against her parents the way you tried to turn Grant against me—" "I won't," Eleanor said quickly. "I swear to you I won't." June nodded slowly, then did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She stepped forward and placed Rosie in Eleanor's arms. "Meet your granddaughter, Mrs. Whitaker. Her name is Rosie Elena Carter Whitaker. She's 3 weeks old, and she's going to grow up knowing that she's loved exactly as she is." Eleanor looked down at Rosie with wonder, tears streaming down her face. "Hello, beautiful girl," she whispered. "Grandma is going to do better this time, I promise." Grant put his arm around June, pulling her close as they watched his mother hold their daughter. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. That would take time and consistent behavior, but it was something equally valuable. A chance for all of them to build something new from the wreckage of what had come before. "Grant," Eleanor said softly, not looking up from Rosie. I'm proud of you. For the first time in your life, you're being the man I should have raised you to be instead of the son I demanded you become. Grant felt June's hand slip into his, her fingers intertwining with his own. I'm still learning, he said honestly, but I have good teachers now. As Eleanor gently rocked Rosie and June leaned against his shoulder, Grant realized that this was what he'd been searching for his entire life. Not his mother's approval, or his board's respect, or society's admiration, but this quiet moment of imperfect people choosing love over fear, forgiveness over resentment, hope over the safety of old wounds. Outside, Seattle's autumn afternoon was turning golden, painting their living room in warm light. And for the first time since he could remember, Grant Whitaker felt like he was exactly where he belonged. 2 years later, the courthouse steps in downtown Seattle were bustling with afternoon foot traffic when June Carter Whitaker emerged victorious from her biggest case yet. At 33, she'd become one of the most respected prosecutors in King County, known for taking on cases others deemed impossible. Today's conviction of a pharmaceutical company for deliberately hiding dangerous side effects would make headlines, but all June could think about was getting home to her family. Her phone buzzed with a text from Grant. Rosie took her first real steps today. Racing around the house like she owns the place. Can't wait to show you. Dinner's in the oven. Love you. June smiled, slipping the phone back into her briefcase as she walked toward the parking garage. 2 years of rebuilding their marriage hadn't been easy. There had been sleepless nights with a teething baby, arguments about work schedules, and moments when old insecurities crept back in. But they'd learned to fight for each other instead of against each other, to communicate before resentment could take root. The drive home to Bellevue took 45 minutes through Seattle traffic, but June used the time to decompress from the intensity of the courtroom. She'd prosecuted corrupt officials, defended victims' rights, and built a reputation that had nothing to do with being Grant Whitaker's wife, and everything to do with her own merit. As she pulled into their driveway, June could hear laughter and splashing from the backyard. She walked around the side of the house to find Grant in the pool with 2-year-old Rosie, who was fearlessly jumping off the pool steps into her father's waiting arms. "Mama," Rosie squealed, spotting June immediately. Her dark hair was plastered to her head, and her blue eyes, so much like Grant's, sparkled with pure joy. "There's my brave girl." June kicked off her heels and sat on the pool edge, dangling her feet in the warm water. "Daddy says you took real steps today?" "Big steps," Rosie declared as Grant lifted her onto the pool deck. Like a big girl, Grant climbed out of the pool, water streaming from his athletic frame. At 39, he'd grown even more handsome, laugh lines around his eyes, silver threading through his dark hair, the confidence of a man who'd found his purpose. "How was court?" Grant asked, wrapping a towel around Rosie before kissing June softly. "We won. Unanimous verdict, $300 million in damages, and new safety regulations that'll protect thousands of patients. That's my brilliant wife." Grant's pride was unmistakable. "Rosie, Mama just made the world safer for lots of people." "Mama fights bad guys," Rosie announced matter-of-factly, as if having a prosecutor mother was the most normal thing in the world. "That's right, sweetheart." June scooped up her daughter, inhaling that perfect baby smell that hadn't quite faded yet. "And Daddy builds companies that help sick people feel better." Grant had used the proceeds from selling Whitaker Medical to fund 3 smaller biotech startups focused on pediatric medicine and rare diseases. He worked from home most days, consulting with brilliant scientists and managing investments while being present for every milestone of Rosie's childhood. "Speaking of family," Grant said carefully, "my mother called. She wants to take Rosie to the Children's Museum tomorrow afternoon." June's relationship with Eleanor had evolved slowly from cautious tolerance to genuine respect. Eleanor had kept her promises: no criticism, no manipulation, no attempts to undermine their parenting choices. She'd also surprised them by becoming an unexpectedly devoted grandmother, showing a patience and gentleness with Rosie that she'd never demonstrated with Grant. "What do you think?" June asked. "I think Rosie loves her grandma Eleanor, and Eleanor has earned the right to have solo adventures with her granddaughter." It had taken 2 years, but Eleanor had proven that people could change when they genuinely wanted to. She'd sold the family estate and moved to a smaller condo, joined a book club, started volunteering at a literacy program. Most importantly, she'd learned to love without controlling. "Grandma Eleanor," Rosie clapped her hands. "Museum has dinosaurs." "Yes, it does," June laughed. All right, but only if you promise to hold Grandma's hand and listen when she talks. As they headed inside for dinner, June noticed the framed photo on the kitchen counter, their second wedding ceremony, held in this same backyard 18 months ago. Not because they'd divorced and remarried legally, but because they'd wanted to make promises to each other based on who they'd become rather than who they'd been. Ethan Langley had attended, bringing his new girlfriend, a federal judge from Portland who shared his political ambitions. He'd toasted them with genuine warmth, saying he was glad to have been wrong about Grant's capacity for change. Bath time for little fish, Grant announced, scooping up Rosie despite her protests that she wasn't tired. June watched them head upstairs, Grant making exaggerated monster noises while Rosie giggled with delight, and felt the deep contentment of a woman who'd fought for her happiness, and won. Her phone rang with a call from her assistant at the prosecutor's office. June, sorry to bother you at home, but the Attorney General's office called. They want to meet with you about heading up the new Public Corruption Task Force. June's breath caught. The task force was a career-defining opportunity, high profile, politically significant, exactly the kind of position she dreamed about in law school. It would mean more travel, longer hours, probably some death threats from people you'd be investigating, her assistant continued. But it would also mean real power to go after systemic corruption at the state level. June looked around their kitchen, Rosie's artwork on the refrigerator, Grant's reading glasses on the counter, the comfortable chaos of a family that had learned to prioritize love over perfection. Set up the meeting, June said, but make it clear that any position I take has to accommodate my family obligations. I negotiate cases, not my values. After dinner, once Rosie was asleep, June and Grant sat on their back porch sharing a bottle of wine and watching the stars reflect on Elliott Bay. The Attorney General wants me for the Corruption Task Force, June said, curled against Grant's side on the porch swing they'd installed last spring. That's incredible, June. You'd be amazing at that. It would mean more time away from home, more dangerous cases, more public scrutiny. Grant was quiet for a moment and June could feel him thinking through the implications. What do you want to do? I want to take it. I want to fight corruption at the highest levels, hold powerful people accountable, make sure the system works for everyone instead of just the wealthy and connected. Then take it. June turned to look at him. Just like that? June, I married a woman who wants to change the world. I'd be an idiot to ask you to be smaller than that. Grant brushed a strand of hair from her face. Besides, Rosie should grow up seeing her mother as a powerful woman who never compromised her principles for anyone's comfort, even if it means more time apart, more stress on our family. We'll figure it out, we always do. June kissed him softly, tasting wine and possibility, and the comfortable intimacy of two people who'd learned to choose each other daily. Grant, do you ever regret it? Walking away from Whitaker Medical, choosing us over the empire you built? Grant looked out at the water, considering the question seriously. June, 2 years ago I had a billion-dollar company, my mother's approval, and the respect of everyone in Seattle's business community. I also had an empty house, a broken marriage, and no idea who I was underneath all the expectations. He turned to face her fully. Now I have a wife who trusts me enough to build dreams with me, a daughter who runs to me when she's scared, and work that feels meaningful instead of just profitable. I sleep through the night because I'm not haunted by what I've given up. I'm grateful for what I've gained. I love you, June said simply. Not the man you were trying to be for everyone else, but exactly who you are. I love you too, both my girls, more than I ever imagined possible. As they sat together in comfortable silence, June thought about the path that had brought them here. Divorce, hidden pregnancy, public scandal, family warfare, and finally the courage to rebuild on a foundation of honesty instead of expectation. Rosie would grow up in a house where love wasn't conditional, where career ambition and family devotion could coexist, where mistakes were acknowledged and forgiven instead of hidden or repeated. Grant, can I ask you something? Anything. If you could go back and change how we met, avoid all the drama with your mother, skip the divorce and pain, would you? Grant considered this, watching moonlight dance on the water. No, he said finally, because going through all of that taught us how to fight for each other instead of taking each other for granted. We know now what we almost lost, and we'll never be careless with it again. June smiled, settling more deeply into his embrace. Good answer. Above them, Seattle's skyline glittered with promise and possibility. Inside their home, their daughter slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that she was loved unconditionally by parents who'd learned the difference between perfection and happiness. And on the porch swing where they'd shared countless conversations about dreams and fears and the ordinary magic of building a life together, Grant and June Whitaker held each other and planned for a future that belonged entirely to them. Some love stories end with happily ever after, but the best ones never really end. They just keep growing deeper and stronger through all the beautiful complications of choosing each other, again and again, for the rest of their lives. What would you have done in Grant's position? Chosen family, wealth, and approval, or love that required sacrificing everything you'd built? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below, letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.